This video will explain how to create a distance raster surface using Spatial Analyst. Now, interpolation, what does that mean? Well, you could use an algorithm or some geostatistical method, but the bottom line is this: you don't have data for every location in an area. You have different places where you know a certain value, and yet you're trying to describe a landscape when there are holes, so to speak, when it comes to the data. So what do? Well, using mathematical methods, you can interpolate what is the most likely value in a certain location. And it could be a lot of things. It can be distances from different objects, but also it could be concentrations of certain, say, plant or animal species. It could be looking at plumes of, say, toxins in the air. But with each one of these examples, once again, you're using known points of information or polygons or lines of information, and for the rest of the surface of an area, you are going to interpolate what is going to be most likely, using the mathematical method chosen, the most probable value as you move across the surface. So with that said, let's go ahead and create a distance surface. Now, before we get into that, when it comes to Spatial Analyst, if it doesn't work and you say, oh my gosh, something is broken here, first things first, go to Customize in the menus and go ahead and please click on Extensions, and you should see a check mark next to Spatial Analyst. If there isn't a check mark, go ahead and check it. That'll probably solve the problem. If you see that you just cannot check it, that's when it's time for you to go to the next step, possibly contact ESRI Tech Support or your system support person, whoever. But that's where you're going to have to go with that. Check the license. But just by checking that, if you see a black check next to Spatial Analyst, you should be fine. So where do we go? We're going to go to ArcToolbox. And when you open it up, you're going to see that ArcToolbox, so long as everything is working good with Spatial Analyst, you'll see Spatial Analyst Tools toolbox included. And when you open it up, you're going to see you're going to have a variety of tools here. So for people wanting to explore the types of surfaces you can interpolate, there's just a lot of things you can do here. But let's create something nice and simple. That is a distance surface. So I will click on Distance. And the next thing I'll click on will be this tool, Euclidean Distance. Euclidean Distance. And we're looking at some just straight line distances here. So I'm going to click on Euclidean Distance. Now, before we go any further, when it comes to the environment of these operations, it's going to be essential to set up what we call the mask. The mask is going to identify just the area that Spatial Analyst will obligate itself towards completing different operations. If you don't set up the mask, you're going to see that Spatial Analyst thinks that you want to include the entire surface of the planet. It's going to not be a good thing. So if you click on Environments, you'll see in Environments that there is an option here for raster analysis. And under raster analysis, you'll see the option for mask. Now the mask, you see all the different layers that are, for this example, they're in the table of contents. The mask for this one is going to be the block population. It's going to be that layer. Let me move this down here for a second and move this out of the way. I'm not going to do that. Haha. Okay. There we go. And move our toolbox out of the way. There. There it is. Talked about it just before the beginning of the video. Here is the block population. I could turn it on, I could turn it off. That is what's going to set up the boundary of these operations. So let me pull Euclidean distance back up again. Let me get back into environments. There. Okay. And so, going back to raster analysis, the mask is going to be block population. And I click OK. So one more time, you go into environments, and you go to raster analysis, and you set up the mask. And the mask is going to be, for this one, block population for this example, and I clicked OK. Now we get to plug everything else in. Input raster or feature data source. What is it that's going to be the target that we're going to be measuring distance from? Now you don't need to have everything in raster format when it comes to spatial analysis. Matter of fact, things work a little bit better. Like for instance, for distance analysis when you're working with featured data. So the input raster or feature data source. Here we have highways. Now highways is still in feature format. Okay, points, lines, polygons. Okay, it's a line, and that's great. Don't have to turn it into a raster. Output distance raster. Let's go ahead and put this into a geodatabase that I created for Shawnee County, and let's call this dist raster. Yes, very clever name. Distant raster. Okay, and you have a couple of other options here, but especially when it comes to output cell size, just please note that quite often the default is acceptable unless you have something specific that you're dealing with where you need to increase the resolution. And typically, if you increase, or sorry, you decrease the cell size, that will give you a finer looking raster surface. But now that looks fine, and I'm going to click OK. And away it goes. Aha. Let's see what we got here. Now in the table of contents, you see dist raster, and you see different values here. By the way, you're going to see that these units that you're seeing here, some quite odd ones. You're looking at, when it comes to the projection coordinate system, it's looking at what are your distance units, and so that when it comes to the calculations that are done using raster calculator, when you finally want to plug all this data in for analysis, it does get taken care of, so to speak. So don't freak out if you see that. Now let me go ahead and turn off block population here. There. Now let's see what we got. Okay, very psychedelic, and you see that you have these different colors that are representing distances from the source right here, which was the highways. And please note that visually you might say, okay, we just got a chunk of this, that, the other thing. Those cells, they do have their own special values as you move across. They're unique values as they increase in value as they move away from the highways. So again, we're looking at the play of cartography here when it comes to you seeing these different color changes right here. And that is how you would create a distance surface in Spatial Analyst.